The colony ship New Hope shuddered violently as it broke through the atmosphere of the alien world. Inside the passenger bay, baby Malik Johnson cried in his mother Denise's arms while the ship's hull screamed under the pressure. Warning lights flashed red everywhere, and the smell of burning metal filled the air. All passengers to escape pods immediately. Captain Jerome Washington's voice boomed through the speakers, but his words were barely audible over the deafening roar of the failing engines. Denise clutched 3-month-old Malik tighter as she stumbled toward escape pod 7. Her husband had died during the journey from Earth, leaving her alone with their baby. Around her, other colonists pushed and shoved in panic. Children screamed, adults shouted, and the ship continued its deadly spiral toward the planet's surface. The escape pod was already crowded when Denise squeezed inside with Malik. She found a spot next to Dr. Keisha Williams, who was trying to calm a group of frightened teenagers. The pod's door sealed shut with a sharp hiss, and immediately they were thrown into space. But something went wrong. Instead of a smooth descent, their pod spun wildly out of control. Through the small window, Denise could see the planet rushing up to meet them, a world of deep canyons, strange purple vegetation, and towering rock formations that looked like ancient castles. The impact was brutal. The pod hit the canyon wall, bounced twice, and then tumbled into the darkness below. Denise felt her grip on Malik loosen as they were thrown around like toys in a washing machine. She reached for him desperately, but another violent impact sent the baby flying toward the damaged rear section of the pod. "My baby," she screamed, but it was too late. A gaping hole in the pod's hull had opened, and little Malik disappeared into the blackness of the alien canyon. The pod finally came to rest on a narrow ledge hundreds of feet below the surface. Of the 12 people who had entered the pod, only 6 survived the crash. Denise was unconscious, bleeding from a head wound, while Dr. Williams crawled through the wreckage looking for survivors. Deep in the canyon, baby Malik had fallen into a network of caves that humans had never seen. These tunnels stretched for miles underground, carved out over thousands of years by an ancient river. The air was warm and humid, filled with strange phosphorescent moss that glowed with a soft blue light. The caves were not empty. They were home to the Ravenclaw pack, massive creatures that looked like a cross between giant wolves and prehistoric reptiles. Their scales were black as midnight, but their eyes glowed like golden fire in the darkness. Each creature was the size of a small horse, with powerful jaws filled with razor-sharp teeth. The pack's matriarch, an ancient female the others called Nightfang, was the first to discover the crying human infant. She approached slowly, her massive head lowered as she sniffed the strange little creature. Her pack mates watched nervously from the shadows, unsure whether this was prey or something else entirely. Nightfang had recently lost her own cubs to a territorial battle with a rival pack. The pain of that loss still burned in her chest, creating an emptiness that nothing could fill. But when she looked at this helpless, hairless creature, something stirred deep within her maternal instincts. The baby's cries echoed through the cave system, a sound unlike anything the Ravenclaws had ever heard. It wasn't the squealing of their usual prey or the roars of rival predators. It was something vulnerable and innocent, something that called to the protective instincts buried deep in Nightfang's ancient DNA. She picked up Malik gently in her massive jaws, being careful not to harm his soft skin with her teeth. The other pack members followed as she carried him deeper into the safest part of their territory, away from the younger, more aggressive hunters who might see him as an easy meal. In the days that followed, the surviving colonists would search the canyon walls for any sign of the missing baby. They found pieces of the escape pod and scraps of torn clothing, but no trace of little Malik Johnson. After 2 weeks of dangerous climbing and searching, they sadly concluded that no one could have survived a fall into those dark depths. Captain Washington held a memorial service for the lost colonists, including baby Malik. His mother Denise, still recovering from her injuries, wept as she placed a small toy spaceship on the memorial wall. She believed her son was gone forever, never imagining that far below in the glowing caves, Nightfang was teaching him to drink from the underground streams and keeping him warm with her massive body during the cold canyon nights. The Ravenclaw pack had no way of knowing they had just adopted the future king of their species. 15 years had passed since that terrible crash, and the canyon had become home to something extraordinary. Malik Johnson was no longer the helpless baby who had fallen from the sky. Now he stood 6 feet tall, his dark skin marked with ritual scars that told the story of his hunts, his muscles lean and powerful from years of climbing canyon walls and chasing prey through underground tunnels. He moved through the cave system like he was born there, his bare feet silent on the rocky ground. The other humans would never recognize him now. His hair had grown long and wild, decorated with Ravenclaw teeth and colorful stones from deep in the earth. He wore simple clothes made from animal hide, and his eyes held the patient wisdom of a predator who understood both hunting and survival. The Ravenclaws had accepted him completely. What started as Nightfang's protective instinct had grown into something much deeper. Malik could communicate with them through a complex system of growls, body language, and the bioluminescent patterns that appeared on their scales when they were excited or angry. He understood their social structure, their hunting strategies, and their ancient traditions better than any human scientist ever could. But Malik was still human, and that made all the difference. While his pack brothers relied on instinct and strength, he used tools and planning. He had learned to make spears from canyon wood and sharp stones, to weave ropes from tough plant fibers, and most importantly to control fire without fear. The first time he brought fire into the caves, the adult Ravenclaws scattered in terror. Fire was their ancient enemy, something that drove them from their territories and burned their young. But Malik showed them patience and trust, demonstrating how fire could cook meat, provide warmth during the cold season, and even help them dig new tunnels by heating and cracking solid rock. Slowly, the pack learned to accept what Malik called his bright helper. The younger Ravenclaws were especially curious, watching as he used controlled flames to hollow out new sleeping chambers and create tools they never imagined possible. Life in the canyon had its challenges. During the dry season, when the underground streams ran low, Malik's human intelligence proved invaluable. He remembered patterns the Ravenclaws couldn't see, tracking water sources across vast distances and digging wells in places where the pack would never think to look. When food became scarce, he set up complex trap systems that could catch multiple prey animals without requiring the dangerous group hunts that sometimes cost pack members their lives. The elder Ravenclaws began calling him Swift Mind That Walks Upright, a title of deep respect in their culture. Unlike the simple names they gave to ordinary pack members, this name recognized Malik as something special, neither fully Ravenclaw nor fully the strange two-legged creatures that lived above the canyon, but something new and valuable. Meanwhile, far above in the human settlement, life continued in ways Malik could never imagine. The colony had grown from a desperate crash site into a thriving town called New Haven. Dr. Keisha Williams had become the settlement's head of research, spending her days studying the planet's unique ecosystem and trying to understand the intelligent creatures that lived in the deep places. Scout Damon Brooks had noticed strange things during his explorations near the canyon rim. Tool marks on trees that seemed too precise for animal claws. Fire circles in places where lightning never struck. Carved symbols on rock faces that looked almost like a primitive writing system. He reported these findings to the settlement council, but most people dismissed them as natural phenomena. Only Dr. Tiana Mitchell, the colony's xenobiologist, took the report seriously. She had been studying the Ravenclaws from a distance for years, using long-range cameras and motion sensors. She knew these creatures were intelligent, but the evidence suggested they were becoming more sophisticated at an impossible rate. Tool use, controlled fire, organized agriculture. These were developments that should take thousands of years, not decades. What she didn't know was that all these changes came from one source. A human child who had learned to think like a Ravenclaw while keeping his human creativity and problem-solving abilities. Malik had no idea that his birth species lived just a few miles above his head. To him, the upper world was a place of dangerous storms and bright, burning light where nothing good could survive. His world was the caves, the pack, and the endless hunt that defined Ravenclaw existence. But that was about to change. As Malik entered his 20th year, events were already in motion that would bring these two worlds together in ways no one could predict. The boy who fell from the sky was about to discover his true destiny. The trouble started with the scent of strangers on the wind. Malik noticed it first during his early morning hunt, a sharp, aggressive smell that made the hair on his arms stand up. The Ravenclaws in his pack sensed it too, their scales flickering with nervous orange patterns as they gathered around their territorial markers. Nightfang, now old and gray around her massive snout, approached Malik with concern in her golden eyes. Through their shared language of growls and gestures, she explained what every pack member already feared. The Ironback clan was moving into their territory, and their leader Bonecrusher had never been one to negotiate or share hunting grounds. Malik had heard stories about the Ironback pack since he was young. They were larger and more vicious than his family, with metallic scales that could deflect most attacks. Their territory lay in the deeper canyons where the rock was black and sharp, and food was harder to find. For years they had been expanding outward, driving smaller packs from their homes and claiming the best hunting grounds for themselves. The first confrontation came at dawn 3 days later. Malik was teaching two young Ravenclaws how to set snares near the underground river when the sound of fighting echoed through the cave system. He dropped his tools and ran toward the noise, his pack brothers close behind. In the main cavern, chaos had erupted. 6 ironback warriors had invaded the heart of their territory, led by a massive male whose scales gleamed like black metal in the cave's phosphorescent glow. This was Bonecrusher, a creature so large he had to duck his head to fit through most of the tunnel entrances. Nightfang faced him in the center of the cavern, but even Malik could see she was outmatched. Age had slowed her reflexes and Bonecrusher was in his prime. Around them, younger Ravenclaws from both packs circled warily, waiting for the signal to join the battle. Malik made a decision that would change everything. Instead of waiting for the formal challenge to play out, he stepped between the two massive creatures, his human voice cutting through their threatening growls. "Stop!" he shouted, using the deep, resonant tones he had learned to communicate with the pack. "This territory belongs to all who live here. There is enough for everyone." Bonecrusher's head swiveled toward him, and for the first time the Ironback leader seemed confused. Here was a creature he had never seen before, clearly not a Ravenclaw, yet speaking their language and standing among them as an equal. The other Ironbacks shifted nervously, unsure how to respond to this strange development. But confusion quickly turned to mockery. Bonecrusher let out a sound that was unmistakably laughter, a harsh barking noise that echoed off the cave walls. Through growls and aggressive posturing, he made it clear that he saw Malik as nothing more than a pet, a weak creature that the pack had foolishly allowed to live among them. That insult was more than Malik could bear. He had spent 20 years proving himself to this pack, earning their respect through countless hunts and acts of courage. He would not let this outsider dismiss him so easily. "Then face me," Malik declared, using the formal challenge words he had learned from pack tradition. Leader against leader. Winner takes the territory. The cavern fell silent. Even Nightfang looked shocked. In Ravenclaw culture, leadership challenges were fights to the death, and Bonecrusher had never lost one. He was twice Malik's weight with natural weapons that could tear through stone. It seemed like suicide. But Malik had advantages that no Ravenclaw could understand. 20 years of human intelligence combined with Ravenclaw instincts had taught him things about combat that pure strength could never match. He understood timing, strategy, and most importantly, how to use his enemy's size against him. The fight began with Bonecrusher's confident charge, his massive claws extended to end the battle quickly. But Malik wasn't there when the attack landed. He had rolled aside at the last second, using his smaller size and superior agility to avoid the crushing blow. What followed was unlike any leadership challenge the packs had ever witnessed. Instead of meeting strength with strength, Malik used speed and cunning. He led Bonecrusher on a chase through the cave system, using narrow passages where the larger creature couldn't maneuver effectively. He set traps using loose rocks and his knowledge of the cave's weak points. Most importantly, he used fire. When Bonecrusher cornered him in a dead-end tunnel, Malik ignited a carefully prepared pile of dry moss and animal fat. The sudden flare of light and heat sent the Ironback leader into a panic, his natural fear of fire overriding his fighting instincts. In that moment of confusion, Malik struck. Not with claws or teeth, but with a spear he had hidden in the tunnel earlier. The sharp stone point found the one spot where Bonecrusher's metallic scales were thin, just behind his front leg where the ancient armor couldn't fully protect him. The wound wasn't fatal, but it was decisive. Bonecrusher stumbled, his confidence shattered by pain and the unprecedented experience of being outfought by a creature half his size. Malik stood over the fallen leader, his spear pointed at Bonecrusher's throat. In that moment, both packs recognized a new kind of alpha, not the strongest or the most vicious but the smartest. Commander David Jackson wiped the sweat from his forehead as he studied the canyon maps spread across the hood of their exploration vehicle. After 15 years of settlement, the humans of New Haven were finally ready to expand beyond their safe zone and explore the deeper regions of this alien world. His team of 12 scientists and security personnel had been mapping the southern canyon system for 3 weeks, documenting everything from water sources to mineral deposits. Dr. Alicia Davis, the team's anthropologist, was particularly excited about the strange markings they had been finding carved into rock faces throughout the region. The symbols appeared to be some kind of primitive writing system, far more complex than anything they had seen from the planet's wildlife before. "These aren't random scratches," she explained to the commander as they examined a series of carved spirals and lines on a canyon wall. "There's pattern here, intention. Something intelligent made these marks." Jackson nodded, but his attention was focused on more practical concerns. They were 3 days into the deepest part of the canyon system, farther from New Haven than any human expedition had ever traveled. The rock formations here were different, darker and more jagged, with caves that seemed to go down forever into the planet's core. Sergeant Kevin Williams, their head of security, didn't like it. He had been on edge since they entered this region, constantly checking his weapon and scanning the shadows between the rocks. "Something's watching us, Commander," he said quietly. "I can feel it." His instincts proved correct. As the team made camp that evening near a cluster of ancient stone pillars, the attack came without warning. A pack of ironback ravenclaws emerged from the caves like living shadows, their metallic scales gleaming in the firelight. These weren't the smaller, more cautious creatures the humans had observed from a distance near their settlement. These were massive predators, scarred from countless battles and desperate for food. The humans scattered, grabbing weapons and diving for cover behind their vehicles. Dr. Alicia Davis found herself separated from the group, trapped behind a fallen boulder as one of the creatures stalked toward her with deadly intent. She could see its golden eyes reflecting the firelight, could smell its hot breath as it prepared to strike. Then something impossible happened. Another Ravenclaw appeared, but this one was different. It moved with fluid grace, and riding on its back was a figure that made Dr. Davis question her sanity. A human being, wild-haired and dressed in animal skins, directing the creature's movements with subtle gestures and low growls. What followed was the most incredible display of combat coordination she had ever witnessed. The newcomer and his pack, for now she could see there were more of them emerging from different cave entrances, moved like a single organism. They didn't just fight the Ironbacks, they outmaneuvered them completely. The wild human, and Dr. Davis was now certain that's what he was, used tactics no Ravenclaw would ever think of. He directed his pack to drive the Ironbacks into narrow spaces where their size became a disadvantage. He used fire, something that sent both groups of creatures into instinctive fear, but his pack had learned to overcome that fear and use it as a weapon. In less than 10 minutes, the attacking Ironbacks were either dead or fleeing back into the deep caves. The rescue had been swift and decisive, but now the human exploration team faced something even more shocking than the attack itself. The wild man approached them cautiously, his pack flanking him but keeping their distance. When he spoke, his voice was rough from years of communicating more with growls than words, but the language was unmistakably human. "You are from the Sky Place," he said, studying their faces with intelligent brown eyes. "The place of burning light and metal birds." Commander Jackson stepped forward slowly, his weapon lowered but ready. "Who are you? How did you get here?" "I am Malik," came the response. "Son of Nightfang, leader of the Canyon Packs. This is my territory, my family." He gestured to the Ravenclaws surrounding them, who watched the humans with curious but wary golden eyes. Dr. Davis felt her scientific mind racing. This was first contact with an indigenous human population, except this human seemed to have been raised by the planet's native species. The implications were staggering. "Malik," she said carefully, "were you born here? Are there others like you?" The young man's expression grew distant, as if accessing memories from long ago. "I fell from the burning sky when I was small. Nightfang found me, raised me as her own. I know nothing of the Sky People's ways." The pieces began falling into place for Commander Jackson. The colony records mentioned a baby lost during the original crash landing 20 years ago. Could this wild man be that missing child, grown to adulthood among alien creatures? But their reunion was interrupted by a new complication. More humans were approaching from the direction of their base camp, a heavily armed military unit that had been sent to investigate when the exploration team missed their scheduled check-in. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Mitchell led this new group, and his approach was far less diplomatic. He saw wild humans living with dangerous alien creatures as a threat to be contained, not a miracle to be celebrated. "Stand down, civilian," he barked at Malik. "You're coming back to New Haven for debriefing and medical evaluation. Those creatures are to be sedated and studied." Malik's pack sensed the hostile intention immediately. Their scales began shifting to aggressive red patterns, and low growls echoed through the canyon. 20 years of protecting this territory had taught them to recognize threats, and these new humans clearly meant harm to their leader. The situation was about to explode into violence when Malik raised his hand, speaking in the complex growling language of the Ravenclaws. His pack held their position but remained ready to fight. "You misunderstand," he said to the colonel, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I am not your lost colonist to be rescued. I am the king of this place and you are trespassing in my domain." The tension in the canyon could have been cut with a knife. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Mitchell stood with his weapons ready, facing down a man he saw as a confused colonist who needed to be brought back to civilization. But Malik Johnson was no longer the helpless baby who had fallen from the sky 20 years ago. He was something entirely new, a bridge between two worlds that had never been meant to meet. Dr. Alicia Davis stepped between the two groups before violence could erupt. As an anthropologist, she understood what the military commander could not see. This wasn't a rescue mission anymore. This was first contact with a completely new form of human society. "Colonel, wait," she said firmly. "This man isn't a prisoner or a victim. Look at what he's accomplished here. He's created peace between species that should be natural enemies. He's built something we've never seen before." Malik appreciated her intervention, but he knew words alone wouldn't be enough. The military humans had come with fear and aggression, seeing his pack as dangerous beasts to be controlled. He needed to show them a different way forward. Over the next 3 days, Malik did something that would change the course of human expansion across the galaxy. Instead of fighting or hiding, he invited both groups to witness his world. He led them through the canyon system, showing them the complex society he had helped create. The humans from New Haven watched in amazement as Malik demonstrated how the Ravenclaw packs had learned to farm underground mushrooms, how they had developed a system of trade between different territories, and most incredibly, how they had learned to work alongside their human leader to solve problems that neither species could handle alone. Dr. Nicole Carter, the colony's chief medical officer, was particularly fascinated by the medical knowledge Malik had developed. The Ravenclaws had shown him healing plants that could treat infections and injuries far more effectively than anything in the human medical supplies. In return, Malik had taught them basic surgery techniques and hygiene practices that had dramatically reduced infant mortality in the packs. But the real breakthrough came when a crisis struck that required both communities to work together. A massive earthquake had destabilized part of the canyon system, trapping a group of human geologists in a collapsed cave while simultaneously threatening the main Ravenclaw nursery where dozens of young cubs were sheltering. Malik didn't hesitate. He organized a joint rescue operation that used human engineering knowledge and Ravenclaw strength and agility. The humans provided precise calculations about where to dig safely, while the Ravenclaws used their natural ability to navigate tight spaces and their powerful claws to move massive rocks. Commander Jackson watched in disbelief as his people worked side by side with creatures they had feared just days before. The Ravenclaws followed human technical instructions while the humans trusted their lives to alien strength and instincts. It was cooperation on a level he had never imagined possible. The rescue was successful, but more importantly, it proved something that would echo across human space for generations to come. Different intelligent species could not only coexist, but could create something greater together than either could achieve alone. In the weeks that followed, Malik worked tirelessly to establish what would become known as the Canyon Accords, the first treaty between humans and a non-human intelligence. The negotiations were complex, involving not just territorial agreements but cultural exchange programs, trade relationships, and joint scientific research projects. Administrator Robert Clark, the head of New Haven's civilian government, initially opposed the idea. He worried about the safety of human colonists and the complications of dealing with alien allies. But when the first interspecies agricultural project produced food yields triple what either group had achieved separately, even the skeptics began to change their minds. Malik became the official ambassador to the Deep Territories, a title that carried authority over both human settlements in the Canyon region and the United Ravenclaw packs. He established his headquarters in a vast cavern system that connected to both the human colony above and the Ravenclaw territories below. The transformation was remarkable to witness. Human engineers worked with Ravenclaw builders to create structures that were both technologically advanced and perfectly adapted to the canyon environment. Ravenclaw hunters shared their knowledge of the planet's ecosystem while learning to use human tools and techniques. But perhaps most importantly, the children of both species began growing up together. Young humans learned Ravenclaw communication methods and survival skills, while Ravenclaw cubs played human games and learned to use technology. A new generation was emerging that saw the partnership between species as natural and normal. Word of the Canyon Kingdom spread throughout human space. Other colonies began reporting their own attempts at interspecies cooperation, inspired by the success of Malik's experiment. Xenobiologists and diplomats traveled from across the galaxy to study the first successful human-alien partnership. 5 years after that first tense encounter in the canyon, Malik stood on the great balcony of the Treaty Hall, looking out over a thriving community that defied everything humans had believed about their place in the universe. Below him, human children played with Ravenclaw cubs in integrated schools. Human farmers worked alongside Ravenclaw hunters in the agricultural terraces. Scientists from both species collaborated in laboratories that pushed the boundaries of knowledge. The baby who had been thrown into a nest of alien beasts had indeed become their king. But more than that, he had become something the galaxy had never seen before, proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in conquest or technology, but in their ability to build bridges, create families, and find common ground with any intelligent life they encountered. The boy who fell from the sky had taught two worlds how to rise together.